Hello, wonderful people. Shaun Tucker here, coach, trainer, and the man behind the mic in the brand new podcast, How Are You Really Mum? With the fresh male perspective, this is a place where we will unveil the layers and celebrate the woman behind motherhood. In How Are You Really Mum, we acknowledge the joys, the challenges, the growth, and the tears. I hope you enjoy the show. And welcome back to the How Are You Really Mum podcast with myself, Shaun Tucker. And I'm here with an amazing lady by the name of Natasha Paes. And Natasha, she's a Zumba instructor. She's a mother of 2 kids. And she's actually from Singapore, a place not too far away from my own heart. So my own wife is from Singapore. And yeah, she's just an amazing lady who really just cares so much for bettering human beings through physical wellness and fitness and Zumba and yoga and all those things. So Natasha, welcome to the show. So delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Shaun. It's amazing to be here. I thought I would be really nervous, but I just feel like it's going to be a very fun session.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
No, you're so welcome. And it's, if you can't tell, for those who are maybe listening, you might hear it. It's a slightly different quality. It's because we're doing our very first in-person recording today. And we are here in the city of Melbourne in a private podcast studio. And Natasha actually said it. She's like, well, why don't we do it in person? I was like, why don't we do it in person?
Yes.
So we did.
It's amazing. A first time experience.
Yeah. And Natasha, I just really want to start by asking the question. I mean, you're a mother of 2 kids. You've spent a lot of your time raising your kids, right? And your kids are now in their teenage years, some of them getting a bit later and they're in university and things like that, right? So you've got a lot more time on your hands.
Right.
They're a lot less dependent on you. So I just want to ask, like, what do you do with your time now that you've sort of found yourself again?
Good question. So honestly, if I go back a little, my kids have always been telling me that I love sharing about and teaching my Zumba and yoga classes, but I've always been treating it as a hobby. So it's time now for me to spread my wings and just speak more about my classes, do things that I really love to do, step out of my comfort zone. And right now, that's exactly what I'm doing. So it's discovering myself, following my passion, and also moving forward to creating a community of like-minded people where we talk more about wellness, holistic growth, and just being the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, I love what you've just said there. And there's so much to unpack because, I mean, I can see you embodying that. I see you as a person, as a being, fully embodying what you said just then, right? So really hats off to you, first and foremost, because actually gaining the confidence to step into your comfort zone is something that I, in my own journey, have struggled with a lot. And it doesn't take much to figure out that the people who get outside or get inside the discomfort zone are the ones who actually make a huge impact in the world. And those people are the ones who really just, it starts from within, right? You need to be a little bit uncomfortable to really peel back the layers of who you think you are. Because the identity, and I think I'd love to speak about that today, the identity of being a mum. You know, you've raised 2 beautiful human beings who are now, you know, learning to spread their own wings, create something for themselves in the life that they want for themselves. And now you've been given back this almost like second chance in a way to define who you really are. And you, like you said, it was a hobby. And now you want to spread your wings and fly. So can you tell us a little bit about the journey of now in that you're learning to really jump out of the nest, let's say, because it is an empty nest period, right? You're getting to the age where your kids are like, okay, one of them's now in Australia.
Yes.
That's why you're here. And you're originally from Singapore. So that empty nest period, has it been really challenging for you?
I think I'm moving towards it. So there's a lot of apprehension, and I don't know whether I'm ready for it, but I'm just going to embrace what comes along my way, because most importantly, I want to give my kids the confidence that I know that they would be fine.
Yeah.
And we're always there for them. They just need to reach out. But at the same time, like you said, they need to spread their own wings and find their own grounding. So as parents, that's the best thing we can do. So I am actually telling myself and getting used to that fact. And at the same time, at this stage of my life, I've realized that I have to embody and be who I want them to be. If I want them to be successful, happy, and accomplished, that's the way I should be, and that is the way I should project myself. So really, as of now, it's a lot of growth, a lot of learning, a lot of stepping out of my comfort zone and realizing that I'm going to be who I am authentically and no matter what. So this is really a period for me of learning and growth, and I am so looking forward to it.
Well, I commend you. I really do, because can I ask the question, what does it mean for you to be authentic?
It's being myself. It's not having any filters and just organically speaking, coming in the forefront as a whole, not having any hidden parts. So being comfortable with myself, because I think what we tend to do in life is we're always making comparisons, and it's so easy to do that with social media and just looking at how fast and how well people are doing. So seeing things in perspective is just about being comfortable in your own skin and projecting that confidence, that energy, and in front of you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I'd love to share. Authenticity comes from you just being you, like you said, right?
True.
It's just you being yourself. And I think so many people, I mean, I was certainly one of them, get caught up on this idea of like, I need to be a certain way, and that's my authenticity. That's me being authentic. But actually, it's only what you think you are. And that's just coming from the mind, which is merely just an identity that you think you are this person right now, which is actually you being authentic. So even if it is filtered, I mean, the most raw, unfiltered version of yourself, that's the destination. But you to live authentically now is you just being, saying and expressing and opening your heart, and perceiving what is right now. No matter how much limitation there is. And you might have a million different filters happening right now. You might be comparing to everything and everyone and have this idea of who you think you are. And it might be totally false, but you only realize that later.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, very much. Ironically, it's like when you just step out of your comfort zone and you move forward, whether you feel that fear, as long as you're moving forward, you're progressing, you just realize how liberated you feel.
Yeah.
And I think that feeling comes with really pushing the boundaries and honoring your truest self.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yes.
the truest self is really just the most peeled back version of yourself, right?
Yes.
But to show up authentically, I think it's the acceptance. It's the thing that comes before that. It's really it's the journey. It's not the destination. It's actually just the journey. Because if you're an anxious person, say if anxiety's really got you down or depression's really got you down, and you start saying, well, I am a depressed person, that in part is still you showing up authentically. It's not your truest self, but it's the acceptance of this is what's holding me right now. Because only when you can accept what is right now. So if you're totally anxious, and we were having this discussion before our podcast, before we started recording. That was looking back at my own journey of how I learned to speak and do some public speaking. Because when I first started public speaking, I'd had cue cards and I would be in and out of the toilet a few times before I even started speaking. And then when I finally got to it, I'd be so anxious. My whole body would be shaking. I'd be trembling. And I would try and read the cue cards and it just wasn't coming from my heart at all. But that was me showing up authentically at that time. And I think it's just the acceptance of where we are. It's not the striving. It's just the acceptance. And the more we accept the anxious parts, the good and bad parts of ourselves, the more we give people permission, the people around us, the people, our mission, it gives us more impact and it gives them permission to do the same thing. Because it's only the darkness that holds us where we are. Actually, the light is more fearful. We're more fearful of the light than the darkness. It's so ironic.
Yes. Wow. That was so beautifully put. I like it when you explain that you had cue cards and you still went ahead. That was so brave. And I think that's the way we got to be. We got to be the way we are. Show up for ourselves, show up for self-love, and with our imperfections, with our flaws, so people realize that this is the way it is, and the authenticity and just being real. So recently I signed up for an IG Live, and my first IG Live, I could see that I got so emotional. But I kept that reel going because I said, this is for me to see of how far I will be progressing as I move forward, pushing the boundaries. And like you said, that was so beautiful. You give others permission to open up and be vulnerable and share that space. So it's all about creating that community and sharing to get to a higher purpose.
Yeah. Uncovering of the highest self.
Yes.
Or the truest self.
Yes.
And I mean, like you said with your kids, right? You have to show up who you want them to be, because it's merely leading by example. Meaning you can't tell them. I mean, you come from Singapore. I can see it from an observer point of view because I never obviously grew up there. But there's almost like a path in traditional kind of upbringings that your family tells you where to go, tells you what career path to follow, tells you this is your role. And, you know, that is a huge challenge for a lot of people who don't fit into the mold of what they're meant to be, right? Because it's not their truest expression of themselves. Did you face that much when you were going through, you know, childhood and through the school years and who you are right now? Do you find that you're kind of peeling those layers off?
Actually, I was lucky. My parents always gave me the freedom to decide what I wanted to do.
Wow.
So I was very fortunate. And my growing up years were in India. And it was only later on when I started my first job, my first career overseas that I joined, that I came to Singapore. And yes, but I do know of friends who are struggling because their parents perceive and they want them to get into a certain profession.
Yeah.
So that can be very stifling and very frustrating.
Yeah.
And it's really hard, yeah. I mean, we've come to a point where, like even with my own kids, my husband and me, we always encourage the kids to follow their path, and we will support them where they want to go. So that's how they can be their best selves.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's nurturing the environment.
Absolutely.
Not dictating who they should be.
Yes.
And that is so key because we have to do it in ourselves first.
Yes.
And who we think we are is merely based on the past.
Yes.
But who we are really hasn't got anything to do with the past. It is only now.
That is very profound. I like what you said, because just this morning, I was speaking to a friend, and I'm going to tell her to listen to this podcast. She's an amazing mom, and she's got 2 lovely kids. but she's at a point where she's burnt out because she just feels that she's not doing enough. She feels she's not enough. And that's because her upbringing was very turbulent. And because of that, she feels that since she didn't get that love and nurturing during her childhood, her kids are also feeling the same. And so she tends to overcompensate, leading to her burning out. And I was having this long conversation with her, just telling her that we all go through this process, but whatever we are doing the best for our kids. Whether it's a mom or a dad, as parents, we're always striving to do our best.
Yeah.
And just when you said this, I just realized how closely knitted it is. It happens all the time.
And it's ironic because, I mean, I see it, and this is why I'm so passionate for helping mums. This is why I'm committed and dedicated to helping mums, because I see them as an expression of unmet needs of their parents. And what I mean by that is their parents have a pathway paved for them, not necessarily consciously. It's not that they intended it to happen, but all of the anxieties, all of the frustrations, all of the anger and the suppression. And we're generation of our grandparents or great-grandparents, they've gone through war. There's a lot of deep suppression that's happened in the last 100 years. A lot of deep suppression. And we're the expression of that, meaning all of the anxieties, all of the anger, all of the frustrations are passed on. And they say, I don't know where I can back this up, but 2 generations before, your grandmother or your grandfather, depending on what they have in their genes, and emotions are also passed on, right?
Yes.
These are also passed on and expressed through genes as well. So whatever they were sort of going through is what you're dealing with now.
Yes.
And it's interesting because if you feel like you're not enough, this is what I've noticed with a lot of mums, is they can never be enough because they're never meeting the expectations of what their parents told them to do, which is then passed on. It's the same thing passed on generation to generation. They were never meeting the expectations of their parents.
Right, yes.
So they've never ever felt enough. And that's so tragic.
Yes, and it's time to break that.
It is time to break it,
just break away from those shackles and move forward, because those are limiting beliefs. Like you said, your past is your past. So keep it in your past and then move on to your present and focus on that. That's so important.
Yeah. It's so important, but it's so hard.
It's so hard, yeah.
Because that's actually where all of the anxieties and
the
all
familiarity
of the emotions
is, yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
All of these emotions are comfortable.
Yep.
They're even more comfortable when they're suppressed.
Yes.
So the more we try and resist them, the more they will persist.
Yes. And I've realized another thing, the more you resist something, life comes back to you with those similar situations in different ways.
Yeah.
And you keep resisting, you get smaller, and you just fester in that fear and insecurity.
The demons grow larger.
Yeah. So you really have to face your fears and move forward.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's amazing. It's so liberating.
Yeah.
Yes.
Liberation is something, it's an experience, right? It's not something you can define. It's something that's deeply personal.
True.
It's the freeing. Something just feels lighter.
Yes.
I mean, you can describe it, but there's no way to really even describe emotions.
Right. Yes. You just exude that feeling of being yourself, being your true self, which is truly magical. Yeah. And people can feel that energy.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. And that gives them an opportunity to open up as well.
Because it hurts. It hurts to heal, doesn't it?
Yes.
When you're wounded, and think about this for a second, if you've just cut your arm or cut your finger with a knife, right? It hurts. And True. It hurts and hurts and hurts. But if you just keep it bandaged with a Band-Aid, it doesn't give it a chance to heal. You actually need to go through the stinging and the slow recovery of the skin where it becomes a bit itchy, you know, and then you start peeling it.
Yes.
Because it's frustrating to have it go through that healing process. And the more we, I think, just let go and let it happen, do it with an awareness though, because awareness is key, but actually there's one step further in making it conscious, because you're simply aware. And we were talking about coffee earlier as well, just off the podcast. So if you're aware that coffee is a problem for you, for example, it could be any other form of drug, or let's just sugar, right? Sugar and coffee. So if you're aware that you have an issue and you're kind of addicted to these things, these substances, it's not enough to stop you. For you to become really conscious, you need to sit with it. You need to be uncomfortable as anything to realize what it is that is driving that behavior. Because usually it's an emotion.
Yes, very much.
And we try and justify and make it logical by jumping to conclusions. And those conclusions are usually false.
Yes.
And we can be very disciplined and say, no, hard no, and just completely stop us from doing it. But is that really the way? That's my question. Do you think that's the way? Just hard no, you can't do this, or I'm not doing this.
I think it's adapting as you go along, because life is short.
Yeah.
You don't want to restrict yourself. At the same time, you don't want to be too rigid.
Agreed.
So just flowing with the process. So even if you decide, okay, I'm not going to have this coffee, or I'm not going to have a dessert which is sweet, you could probably indulge a little bit, but then you know the consequences. So you make an informed decision. I think that's very important. Yeah. And you move forward. And then you probably can ponder over what you've done and how you want to move forward beyond that. So it's all about adapting and going with the flow. I think that would be a good way of looking at it, because if we get too rigid, then life is not fun anymore.
Yeah. If you're going to put your hand in honey, you're going to get stuck a little bit, right?
Yes, well said.
And it's okay to let life get stuck. Like, I think that's the acceptance part that I was talking about earlier. We need to accept where we are.
Yes.
And the only place where you are right now is not yesterday or tomorrow or even today. It's actually just now.
Right.
You're only now.
In the moment. Yes.
Literally, there's only now.
Yes.
And that the power of now, I mean, there's people that have tried to write books and trying to explain these really simple concepts, but actually you can't define it.
Yeah.
And because we try and define it, it actually distorts it for what it really is. And I was listening to ironically, a podcast on the way to come to the city today. And it was literally talking about Zen Buddhism and what Zen is. So Zen, you can describe it as yoga, you can describe it as flow, you can describe it as many, many things. It's a way of being. It's a state of being, essentially. But you can't describe it because it distorts it. If you think you got it, you haven't.
Yes. Like the way you told me when I asked you about the podcast, I said, how do I prepare for it? And you said, the more you prepare, the more unprepared you'll be. And I love that. Yeah, that was perfect.
Because we don't have a script.
Yes.
We don't have a script. And I think life, we try and script it. And this honestly has been my biggest frustration in my life, is where I've tried to set goals. I've tried to really attain those goals, and it's always met with disappointment because my expectations were never fulfilled. And I think because I've been playing that mind game for so long, I had to sit there for a little bit and realize that life isn't just about what happens in the mind. Life is happening anyway. So if our mind became completely unconscious, and I mean in the way of consciousness, so if we talk about life for a second, what's a bigger process? Is it life or is it your psychological happening?
I think it's your psychological happening. Life is going to, like you said, happen anyway. It's how you perceive life, and that's all coming from you. And like they say, your attitude, your beliefs shape your behavior, and that's the energy that you get back.
Yeah, it's such a paradox because yes, we think we are these enormous, like our psychological manifestation. So our psychology, we feel it is so big, but actually it's not.
Yes.
And that is actually half the problem, because we are in this huge cosmos of existence that's just happening. If we just stop and understand that what is happening now is so big, we can't actually conceptually understand it in our mind, let alone take all that information in.
Yeah, so true.
But here we are right now thinking we have the biggest problem in the world.
Truly a paradox, yes.
And we literally look at all the suffering, we look at all these things that are happening in the world. And there's terrible things happening. There's also wonderful things happening. But this is all just manufactured from our psychology, because we've all seen what's happening and we've tried to give a solution. We've tried to fix things. And the more we try and fix things, more problems we make.
So true. And it's how we perceive it. It might not be a problem.
It may not be a problem,
Yes.
exactly. Because we like to jump. The mind, the intellectual mind, loves to jump to conclusions. But we can't really know what's going on until we sit quietly, still the mind, let our heart open, because we don't have to control a lot of our physiology. In fact, we don't really control any of it. So your heart is just beating by itself, isn't it?
Yep.
Your muscles are just pumping by themselves. Your lymphatic system is just moving by itself. You're not thinking about when to blink, when to, grow your hair or anything like this. But that's you as a life, it's just happening. But in your mind, and I'm not talking about you, Natasha, I'm just talking about anyone. In your mind, you might be feeling guilty that something happened yesterday. Maybe you had the cake and you shouldn't have had the cake. And that's so caught up in your mind right now that you're like, you can't let it go.
True.
I'm on this fat loss diet and I wasn't supposed to have cake, and now I'm feeling guilty and I'm going to do these self-sabotage kind of behaviors. And that, the paradox, is really hard not to grasp. I think everyone has experienced it, and that's why I feel it's okay to talk about it. Everyone in their life has experienced this. But how do we get out of it?
True. It's that feeling that, see, I did it again, or I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Why did I do that? And, it's always that insecure feeling, but it's like just recognizing that you've done it, and what do you learn from it, and how do you move on from here? So I think it's as simple as that, but it's very hard when you're in the process and you've done something that you feel you shouldn't have done, or you haven't been disciplined enough. And it's just about moving forward and being more careful in the future. So
being aware.
Yeah, just being aware. Yeah, just being aware and being in tune with your feelings. And whenever you want to show up, you show up as a whole, as your true, authentic self. I think that's very important. So I think there was a day that was celebrated a week or two ago, which asked, are you okay?
Yeah.
So I think that was beautiful.
Yeah. And are you really okay?
Yes.
Because the whole intention of this podcast, the reason why it was created, by the way, I set with the name of this podcast. I didn't think about what the name was going to be. I just let the name come to me, because I noticed in society, we ask, how are you? And we never really say how we really are.
Yes.
And how are you really was, let's say, the next deduction of, well, how can we make a well-being podcast or a wellness or a self-improvement podcast that just says what it is in the title without necessarily saying that this is what it's all about? Because conversations are really the, let's say, the colors or the variety in life. Because it's the stories that we share through conversation that helps us understand each other and helps us feel more connected, that we're not so alone.
Yes.
In our struggles, in our suffering. And you're suffering what you're going through right now, which is why, are you okay? The are you okay a day? Is it enough? Well, that's a whole nother question on its own, but it's once again coming from that understanding of questioning everything. It's a wonderful thing to happen and something to ask. And the more it's promoted, I think it's great. But there are also limitations, right? Because you'll only really say how you really are once you feel safe enough to say so.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be in that safe space. You need to be in that zone where you can trust the people around you, the energy around you. And that's when you can truly open up and share.
Yeah. And this comes back to parenting, right?
Yes.
Because if you don't feel safe, well, guess what? Your kids are never going to feel safe. They're going to be constantly feeling anxious too. And if you have a lot of mistrust in people, depending on how far away they are as strangers to you, whether they're family or whether they're cousins or just friends from school or someone who you've never literally met before, but this whole trust-based conversation coming from that place of you're not thinking about what to say, you're just saying whatever's on your heart. And that's how I like to live my life as best I can, which I feel is me showing up authentically. But secondly, it also gives other people permission to do that, the same thing, because they're not afraid to share anymore. And it just takes a little bit of courage to get that energy that's down up through your throat to let it happen, right?
Yes. Yeah. Because like you said, if you keep those layers embedded inside, and then that's not good, because that could lead to mental issues, that could lead to a whole lot of other issues like illnesses. And once you just express yourself and peel those layers and just be yourself, others get the permission to. And that's the most beautiful thing. And as a parent, as a mom or as a dad, if you exude that, if you show your vulnerabilities, you show your weakness and your fears along with your triumphs or your achievements, you're showing your kids the way to be.
Yeah.
So they can be the same. So that's a very beautiful thing. And I think we're moving towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we speak. And it's truly an amazing feeling.
We don't realize how much impact we actually have on the people around us.
True.
And the impact we do have on the world. Because, I mean, there's studies that have come out through scientific literature that the way you communicate to your plants will be, are they thriving or are they not thriving? So if you're feeling really remorseful and really angry and you kind of, maybe unconsciously, maybe you're not even doing it consciously, but the way you behave and the way you act, the way you express, because that's all expression, around that plant or that garden or wherever you are, this is why people say that they don't have green fingers, right? Something is inside of them that life outside of them is saying, I'm not willing to continue being around you.
Wow, this is the first time I've heard something like this, and it's really profound, yeah.
Because in the literature, they say like the more you show it love,
yes,
they literally do these tests where uni students or high school students were like hating on this plant, literally, and this plant was literally dying. Whereas on another plant, they were just showing it like unconditional love, just saying you just grow how you want to grow, and you just nurture, right? And that plant was just completely thriving.
Beautiful, yes.
And it's because it soaks up the energy. And when we say energy, we talk about environment. So make it really practical. The environment that you're in, you're soaking up. You're a product of that environment. So you're just naturally taking it all in, whether it's happening consciously or unconsciously.
Yep, that's so true. That it reminds me of Marie Kondo, and when she speaks about having things around you that spark joy.
Yeah.
It's like decluttering the mind, decluttering your space. It all adds in.
Yeah. And if we were, let's say, completely decluttered of everything in our environment and there was no clutter whatsoever, I mean, there is that freedom, right? Which is beautiful. But at the same time, the thing that makes us unique is our characters, meaning your story is different to my story.
Yes. Yep.
So what you have retained as information as to what makes you up is different to me. And honoring the uniqueness, but also understanding that we're all part of this just explosion of energy, right? So the mess is what actually creates the character.
Yes.
And so our uniqueness is actually in the mess of things.
Right.
And if
Yes.
this is why I really love understanding people or spending time with people that live in chaotic, messy environments, because they're usually the most creative people. Whereas if you look at the other side, people who are overly clean and overly meticulous about, or maybe even obsessed with how they show up, how they look, how their environment must look like, it seems almost too fragile.
Yep. And
that if you just change it even a little bit, their mind explodes.
yes. Yeah, that's true. It feels like it's staged and you can sense it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel that. You can feel different as compared to someone who comes the way they are. Very true. Even if it's a chaotic space and they are who they are and they thrive in that energy, you're good with it.
Yeah. And it's like you were saying earlier, it's the judgments that we hold over other people. And a lot of these are just happening, right? We don't mean to judge. It's sometimes we're just reflecting what they're thinking about themselves. So if we were just walking along the street and someone's looking really guilty and ashamed of themselves, and they're not saying this, but because they're mirroring it, they're sending it out to you, they're projecting it. Then we pick that up and we think we're talking or thinking that about them. And so I find it really hard to distinguish, am I reflecting what they're thinking about themselves or am I really thinking that about them? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I'd love to know, firstly, have you noticed and acknowledged that and seen that around you? And secondly, how do you decipher what is you and what is not you?
Well, I was told by a friend actually, whatever you perceive and how you see things is actually a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like, do you see the cup as half full or do you see it as half empty? So I think sometimes you just have to, like how you perceive things is how you got to analyze not analyze, but see how you feel within you. And that's how you project yourself outside. Or if probably you cover up or try to be like someone you're not, then when you glance at a person, it's like energy. So you attract that kind of energy. And then when you see a person, you can be judgmental. And even if that person is not like that, you might just perceive the person like that. So I think it's always coming from you. It's coming from within. It's how you perceive the world, how you perceive people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I fully agree with that. So I guess what I'd love to ask on the back of that is, how do you find people that you want to be around that remind you of who you want to be or who you really are?
Oh, I feel amazing. It feels liberated. It feels like you found your tribe.
And how do you find your tribe?
It's just pushing the envelope, like stepping out of your own comfort zone, moving forward.
Yeah.
And when you do that, I feel the universe just opens up the possibilities for you. Things just happen. Things just fall into your lap. All you need to do is be yourself, embody yourself, and just move forward. And the connections just happen. You're able to just join the dots. But you just have to have that belief and that faith and move forward.
Yeah, so
and trust the process.
I totally agree. Because there's only two things that we really know is, where are you right now? It's now. That's it. Well, actually, it's not even that. I take that back. So where you are right now is here because you can't be anywhere else. It's only here. But when you are right now is only now. So we only know where and when. The rest is all made up.
Yep.
And it's funny because when you become a little bit more uncomfortable, you're walking into your fears, and I mean, they're all manufactured in the mind, right? Those fears. Outside of the mind, there is no fear. It's just, this is what's happening. I mean, you might experience or see things that are making your physiology change, which could be seen as fear, but it's just a mere reaction to what's happening in your environment. It's not a perception of fear. It's just more survival, if that makes sense. So it's just, this is what happens for me to get to the next point in my journey. I need to do this. What's interesting though is the more you open up to that, let's say, perception of what you are really, the more you find people who are also like that. So you find like-journeyed individuals when you step out of that zone of where you're isolated and very separate. Does that make sense?
Yes, a lot of sense.
So,
you find people opening up, sharing their story, and there's so much of power in that because you're peeling off the layers, you're showing up as your true self, and from that place, you can really transform and grow. So it's really amazing. Yeah.
You start to find yourself in everyone else.
Yes. Yep.
And that's...
And you move towards a common purpose and a common goal. So
becomes
really,
a collaboration.
Yes. So there's no competition. It's just collaboration.
Yeah. There's a beautiful quote that I heard only recently, and it was that we're all walking each other home.
Wow. That's really profound.
So the people that you meet that may cause a lot of fear and anxiety in you, I mean, that person is showing you how to go home, because that's what you're reflecting yourself.
So true.
That's where you are right now. And sometimes it's a really hard pill to swallow. It's very uncomfortable.
Yep. It's a very hard lesson, yeah.
And life is a firm teacher.
Yes.
A few podcasts ago, I had a lovely lady named Rakaya on the show. And she said, life is a firm teacher. I was like, wow, that's beautiful, because life is the greatest teacher. I've heard that many times. But life continues to hold really high standards for you to learn what it is on your journey. And your journey is not the same as anyone else's. It's unique to you, but it's not separate from everyone else's journey. And this is how we can have these conversations of being open. We're connecting to each other on our journey.
Yes, that's so true. Yep. It's like no one can be you. So it's your unique path that you have to trail and walk that path. And that's when you meet like-minded people and you collaborate, you join together. So that's really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, once again, to relate it back to us being parents, and I've got a 7-month-old child now. She's a beautiful, beautiful young girl. And who I am, she's just reflecting that. What I do, she's reflecting that. All the behaviors, all of the everything, all the anxieties, all the fears, everything is being reflected by her. She's doing things without, she's not aware she's doing them, right? She's only 7 months old. But there'll come a time where she'll start becoming self-aware. And I think it's usually between the age of 7 to 10, something like that. How can we become more self-aware? I'd love to know your experience in your journey of becoming self-aware.
I think this would be with tuning into ourselves and also just sitting with ourselves sometimes and having a few moments of quiet time daily, if we can do that, or if there is an issue, or if there's anything that's bothering us, just taking that time out to find out if you're anxious, why are we anxious? So basically just being with ourselves and finding out why. And at the same time, it's like I spoke about somatic yoga for my IG live yesterday. That's another way to just be more aware about how you're feeling in your body. Sometimes we hold a lot of pent up emotion, and that may be because you might not realize you might have a stiff shoulder, but you don't even know you have one because you're holding so much of emotion over there because of a concern or an anxiety. So it's just sitting with yourself, doing some breath work, relaxing. It's so hard to do in this fast-paced life. And it's actually so simple, but something that is so simple sometimes can be the hardest thing to do. And hence we really need to reflect, slow down, even if it's for a few moments, and then you can really recharge and reset and feel better.
We're all just trying to process what's happening right now.
Yes.
And we've loaded ourselves up with so much stuff that when a computer becomes very slow, it's because it's doing too many things.
Yes.
If you don't turn your computer off for a number of days, the memory becomes very, very slow. And when the hard disk becomes full, things start moving more slowly as well.
Yeah.
The more we overload ourselves, it's about, like you said, learning to slow down, whatever that means to you, and doing it so you can actually process what is happening. Because what is happening is so much more profound than anything you could possibly do outside of understanding what is happening right now.
Yep. It's all in your mind. It's all going through your mind. And then finally, if you don't recognize or realize it, it's your body. It's your body caving in. And that's when you realize you could have a setback. So it's good to realize that in time. So moving forward, you're more aware and you're more conscious.
And I think getting stuck is a really important process that we can't avoid.
Yes.
Because we need to become stuck to realize that we are stuck.
Yes.
And accept that we're stuck so that we can become unstuck.
Yes.
Because that's the process that's frustrating. People want to bypass that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just understanding that is the process.
Yes.
And the more devoted we are to the standing up, falling down, standing up, falling down. Oh, this is hard. Standing up, falling down. Oh, this is really hard. I don't want to do this again. Right? We just continue going on this journey. I'd then love to ask the question, if being a mum of two kids, if you can just give us one of the most challenging experiences you've had with them, raising them. Is there anyone that kind of comes up to your mind right now that's been like, wow, that was really hard, but we still managed?
I didn't really have any super challenging moments. I think it was probably more emotional.
Yeah.
That would be more about me being not enough. I think that is like the main thing. It would be like, I could have done this better. I could have been a better mother here. I could have nurtured them better. It's always that thought that comes to your mind, but then you've done your best. Just like the conversation I had with my friend who, thanks to her past, felt like she needed to do so much more and she wasn't doing it. So I think that was what I felt with my kids when they were much younger. Mm-hmm. Right now, I'm in a more grounded and centered space. So, but there are still moments where I feel that, yes, I could have done something in a better manner.
Yeah.
But most importantly, knowing that I am doing my best, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of challenging, not really, more on the emotional aspect, more about me, my mind, sabotaging myself.
Understand.
Yes.
That's a huge challenge to overcome, because you can't change anything that you did in the past. You can only change how you are right now. And let's say you can never make up for past mistakes or maybe not being there or not being enough. But you can be enough just as you are right now because you already are. You just don't realize it. And I think that's such a beautiful way to bring us to the end of today's podcast as well. But I just want to ask one more question. And that's to some of the listeners who might be becoming new parents or maybe going through that same thing right now where they constantly feel like they're not enough. And if you could tell yourself at the start of your motherhood journey, what would be the words that you would say to yourself, knowing what you know now, knowing the level of self-awareness that you have? What would you tell yourself to reassure that you are doing just fine, that you are enough?
Wow, that's a really profound question. Knowing what I know now, what I would tell myself would be just doing my best and realizing that whatever I'm doing, and I'm doing it with a heart full of love and looking to nurturing my child to be the best my child can be, that itself is the best thing. And if I can embody that and feel it as I'm doing it, then my child is going to get that energy and feel the same. And so I shouldn't feel that there is a lack. I should always feel there is an abundance. Parenthood is an adventure. It's a journey. It's chaotic. It's crazy. But there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of laughter. And you can learn so much with kids. I think they're the most amazing beings ever. So just look at parenthood as a journey. You're having fun with your child. You're growing. You're learning, unlearning. And just be ready for the adventure. It's going to be an amazing one.
Yeah. Well articulated. Thank you so much for sharing that, because you're right. Absolutely right. You are enough. And what you have right now is the best you have. And that's using it to the best of your knowledge and your best of your capabilities.
And another thing, also treasure each moment, because these moments are so fleeting, they pass by so fast. Because before you know it, your child is already getting older. So you really have to enjoy those priceless moments you share with your child, because this is how you can really bond, nurture, and grow with your child.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Natasha. And well, thank you everyone for listening in to today's episode. It's been an amazing podcast with you, Natasha. And I guess, how can people connect with you? Where do they find you on the internet? They want to partake in some of your Zumba classes.
Oh, wow. Yes. So I have an Instagram handle that is Natasha _Zumba _yoga _wellness. Or they can look me up on my website, which is Natasha Paes at offeringtree.com.
And I'll be sure to link your socials in the show notes as well, so that people can
Awesome.
easily find you.
Thank you.
And shall they want to work with you, absolutely they can. And just a reminder to all the listeners and viewers as well that this is something that I'm super passionate about. In my private coaching with my clients and mums that I serve, it's all about uncovering the layers of who you are and feeling as if you are enough, because yes, it is a process. And that process alone is confusing and extremely difficult. It's not impossible. But sometimes just having someone who maybe can't fully understand because they've never experienced what you've gone through, but just an understanding for you to explore those parts of yourself where you can fully accept who you are and where you are right now. That's what I love to care for, and that's who I want to work with, is those mums who are just inquisitive. They know that they can be more and feel more, be more for their kids, but they maybe don't experience that in their life right now. So just another reminder, just if you want to get in contact and you want to work with me, I do work with with mums in a one-on-one fashion, but also in a group setting too. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Natasha, for being here. If you like this episode and you want Natasha back on, please let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and like the video or like the audio today. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shaun. That was amazing.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this heartfelt journey. Just a reminder to please subscribe, tune in, and become part of our supportive community. Because mums, you're not alone, and the world really needs to know, how are you really, mum? See you next time. Bye for now.